Festival. Welcome. My name is Joe Bill. You're about to see 6 storytellers from my Your Story, Your Show. I think that's what my workshop was called. And so what I did was I worked with them on both honing stories that they already own, that they know, that they want to sort of like freshen up and get some technique around. Then a couple of them are going to do improvised storytelling, which is based in what's it called? It's called story chain, but it's hard to explain. It's essentially basing a story on what comes before it or a suggestion that comes from the audience. So if you've ever seen it in Armando, for example, a lot of times you'll get a suggestion from the audience, somebody will tell a story, so it's kind of in that vein. So there's 6 storytellers, 2 of them will story chain, 4 of them are going to give you stories they prepared for you. First, are you ready for stories? Yeah! First up, who's coming to say Steven?
Growing up, I always really wanted to make my parents proud of me, particularly my mother. My mother was my source of joy, my source of comfort, and my very best friend in the entire world. But over time, she started to really suffocate me. And it wasn't difficult to suffocate me because we lived in a really small apartment, 1,000 square feet maybe, between 5 people, me, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. And man, as one can imagine, it wasn't very hard for me to just feel suffocated and like I just needed space, you know? And so when I went to college, I decided I had to get really far away from them, so I moved up to Boston and froze my ass off. I came back and I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And my parents were really putting a lot of pressure on me at the time to go to law school because my dad was a doctor and I dropped out of pre-med and the next rational thing was to go to law school, I guess. So I went to law school, not because I wanted to, but because I felt kind of compelled to by my parents, particularly by my mother. And I went to the University of Miami and I lived in this big house on 2 acres with 4 or 5 bedrooms. I lost count of all the bedrooms. I was living there all by myself thanks to my dad's friend, Ify, who was a wealthy businessman who had a whole bunch of investment properties who gave me the benefit of living in his house for free. And of course, me being the spoiled brat I was like, I don't want to live in this house. I want to live in Brickell with all my friends. But whatever. Whatever the case is, I lived in this big house all by myself. I went through law school. I went through my first semester of law school, just basically killing myself, trying to succeed, trying to get the very best grades, trying to just make my parents proud of me. And at the very end of my first semester, me and my friends were getting ready, for the end of the semester. We were going to throw a big party at my house where I was living all by myself. I had the space for it. And we were going to invite everybody from my section. There were 60 people or so, and I wasn't a very social person. I wasn't out like hanging out with people besides my douchebag friends. I wasn't like the popular one in the class. I wasn't really one that people gravitated towards. So this was my opportunity really to show people that I was a cool guy, I was a cool guy. I lived in this big house, and I was going to be, the person that threw the party for everybody. I never really threw a party before. It was really something I was looking forward to. And so during the whole month of finals, I was just like beating myself, trying to get the best grades, just trying to ace every single class. And at the end, I just needed to unwind, right? And so me and my friends, Mike, Kyle, Jimmy, we went over, got a keg, we got the table for the beer pong, and we just set up at the house for what was going to be the best party of the year. And of course, we had to start drinking before anybody else arrived because otherwise we would have been, awkward. So I was already drunk, I was drinking beer, taking shots before anybody even got there. And people started filtering in, and before I knew it, I had 60 or so people in my house, and it was a real banger. Everybody was having a great time, and it was amazing. And I was like, this is it, I'm a success. I'm throwing a great party. And I was kind of a douchebag. I still am, but I was kind of a douchebag. I was kind of a douchebag back then. I had a drinking problem, and everybody, for the most part, everybody there was just kind of like unwinding from the finals that we had just taken. just, sipping on beer, socializing. I was shirtless, throwing furniture off of my second floor balcony, telling other people to clean it up. I was that person, whatever. And in the middle of the party, tragedy struck. Yeah, the power went out. And everybody was like, what the hell, what? The power's out, this is so creepy. And I was starting to freak out. And I called my property manager, Ricky. Again, keep in mind, I was living in this house. I don't know if I mentioned this. I was living in this house on 2 acres in Pinecrest for free. And I called my property manager, Ricky. I said, Ricky, what the fuck is going on? The power is out. You're such a fucking asshole. And he was just so taken aback, like, whoa, Steven, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was like, Ricky, what the fuck? I told you that I've been having these power issues, and the power's out. I'm trying to throw a great party for all my friends. And I'm like, at this point, kind of fading out, blacking out. I don't really remember the rest of the conversation with Ricky. The next thing I remember is I'm sitting on my front porch with my friend Jamie, who I had some kind of like vague romantic chemistry with. And we were really good friends, and she was consoling me, and she was telling me, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. And at that point, I didn't feel like everything was going to be fine, because people were starting to leave my party, and I was starting to feel really sad about it. And one by one, everybody was leaving, and I knew by the end of the night I was going to be alone, and honestly, I don't really remember the rest of the party. The last thing I remember was just talking to Jamie. I don't know if we made out or anything like that. That was around 6 or so p.m. The sun hadn't set yet. The next thing I remembered was I woke up in my bed in the middle of the night, and it was wet because I had wet it. And and I just felt like, oh, man, I'm such an idiot. I feel like such a buffoon. I feel like I made a total fool of myself. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. My bed is wet. And I don't know how this party ended. And I felt next to me this presence, like not a spiritual presence, a physical one, because there was a woman in my bed. And I should probably rewind here, because I'm just remembering. My suffocating mother, she was texting me during the middle of the party, checking in on me to make sure that I was okay. Her and my sister, they were checking in on me to make sure I was okay, because I had just gone through this really stressful finals period, and they wanted to know how were finals, and I was just like ignoring them. I was telling them, you're bothering me right now. I'm trying to have fun with my friends, and just like leave me alone, And so I just got drunk, and I said, to hell with them, like I'm going to hang out with my friend Jamie and hopefully make out with her. In the middle of the night, I woke up, my bed was wet, and I just felt like such a buffoon, and I felt like, oh my God, I'm so cool. I got so drunk, and didn't even matter, made a total fool of myself. I still wound up with a fine-ass woman in my bed, thinking that it was Jamie. And I rolled over to snuggle with Jamie, and sure enough, it was my mother. And she said, Bobby, what are you doing? I said, Mom? And she said, you got really drunk yesterday. I had to get the hell out of there, so I went downstairs, and sure enough, my dad was there. And he said, you were hysterical last night. Everywhere I turned, my parents were just there, judging me. And so then I went upstairs, and the sun started to come up, and my parents gathered their things, and before my mom left, she said, I'm very disappointed in you.
Yay! It's like a little mini John Irving novel. Very nice. Our next storyteller, please welcome to the stage, Tara!
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
So, Steven's story reminds me of my relationship with my father. My father was actually my best friend growing up. And we used to do so many fun things together. He used to cook. I have an identical twin. And he used to cook for us, he used to play with us. He was kind of like our big brother. And he grew up in India where he was fully immersed in nature, and he had a love for animals. And he wanted us as Americans, we're first generation, to share that love of the earth. And so he's the type of guy who would never watch sports, but he will watch National Geographic, and he's very much into nature. So he wanted to instill some practical skills into us while also teaching us to appreciate wildlife. So one thing we used to do together was we had a cage that we would set on our deck of our house. I grew up in the DC area. And we would tie to the cage, the door would be open, and we would tie a fishing string to the cage that came into the house. So you could see from the deck door, the glass door, the cage. And we put food in the cage, and when an animal went into the cage, we would pull the string to shut the door. And then we would go outside, we would observe the animal, we would take a picture with it. He would tell us, my sister and I, we were about 6 years old, some things about the animal, and then we would release it. And so we probably traumatized about a dozen animals. We caught different types of birds, squirrels, chipmunks. So I fondly remember those memories. And around that time, same season, winter, our deck would fill with snow. And one day we go outside and the deck is just completely covered with snow. Anyone who's grown up in snowy areas, fresh snow is just completely flat. There's nothing else there. But I saw this little hole in the snow. And so we went out to see what it was, and it was actually this little bird. A fully grown bird, it wasn't a baby bird. Adorable little bird, looked like a little mouse. And we decided this bird needed to be rehabilitated because it wasn't going to survive. And so we take it in, care for it, bring it back to life, but not well enough, because one morning I remember waking up, going downstairs, and the bird was dead. And that broke my heart. At least we got it some warmth before it died. And at that point, my parents decided, okay, I think these two are ready for pets. And they clearly love birds. Let's teach them some responsibility. So that's when we adopted many different types of birds. The first birds we got were white doves. They were two parents that were just beautifully able to fly around, and they're babies that hadn't been raised properly. So they had something called splayed legs, where if they're not raised on a hard enough surface, their legs end up like spreading out like this. It happens to chickens and other birds, they can't walk. So at 6 years old, every day we would put Band-Aids around these little birds' legs so that they could walk properly. Then we ended up getting parakeets. And it was a boy and a girl parakeet who eventually somehow miraculously made a baby. And we watched this baby hatch. Apparently it's not that easy to hatch a baby in a little box. The baby hatches, it grows up, and we watched the evolution of this baby who was, mouth-fed by its mother to now a full-grown baby attacking its mother. And it kind of broke my heart. I'm thinking, like, what are you doing? This mom took care of you, your whole life, and now you're ganging up on it with the dad. It was uncomfortable to watch. Eventually, within that same year, we're still 6 years old, my parents get us 2 cockatiels. And their names were Kaka and Teal. We named them that. I took care of Teal, and my sister took care of Kaka. And we loved these birds like they were our babies. And we were their primary caretakers. So while my parents made sure we didn't kill them, we did things like bathe them, feed them, clean their cage. And we absolutely adored these birds. And loved seeing their different personalities. One was more jealous, one was more laid back. And my dad actually bought an African gray parrot around this time. So we all had these little birds that we took care of. Fast forward 6 years from now, my parents are getting a divorce. And at this time, we're hitting puberty, we're 12, 13 years old. My dad's leaving the house, and my mom wanted nothing to do with the birds. So we end up giving the African gray away, but my sister and I end up taking care of the cockatiels. And as we get older, from middle school into high school, we start kind of neglecting them because we were high schoolers and we're going through puberty and a divorce and trying to fit in and having friends. And eventually we gave them away to the person who cleaned our house in college, and I don't even remember saying goodbye. And to this day, it breaks my heart because I love those birds more than anything. And I still get teary-eyed about it. And interestingly, at the same time, my relationship with my father, who was my best friend, was also completely broken. He went from my best friend to this just angry man. My dad has never been the same since. He's definitely recovered from the divorce, but I felt like I lost my father at that time. So there was a lot of grieving going on. So now fast forward another 12 years. I am in medical school, very much struggling with the lifestyle. And I decided, you know, all I do is sit and study. Maybe I should get a pet. I lived alone at the time, still do. And so I was researching the idea of getting a bird, but I hadn't fully committed to getting a bird yet because I knew the responsibility. But I started taking action steps. So I started doing some research. I went to a bird shop to look at some birds. I ordered a bird cage on Amazon, which was completely returnable. For anyone that knows, they have a good return policy. And I wasn't planning to get a bird if I was going to for at least 2 months. I go to pick up the cage, and I had spoken to the woman in the receiving area telling her, oh, I'm thinking of getting a bird, I'm not sure, but I'm picking up this cage to see if it fits in my place. 2 days after I pick up the cage, I get a call from the front desk of my building. And she says, Dada, can you come down? We have a bird. And I said, what are you talking about? I don't know if I want a bird. No. And then I stop and I say, you know what? Let me just go check it out. So I go downstairs and she gives me a box and she says, please take this box. And I'm like, what? Okay, so I take the box upstairs and I'm in the middle of final exams right now in medical school. Thinking like, I don't have time for this. I open the box and there's a cockatiel. So this is the same exact type of bird that I had as a kid. This is actually the same type of bird I was thinking of getting, okay? So in the box is a cockatiel, a French fry, and a towel. And I'm a little bit confused, like what the hell is going on right now in this box? So I end up rehabilitating this bird. I knew exactly how to take care of this bird because I had taken care of this type of bird since I was 6 years old. This bird immediately took to me since the first day. And so at this point it's been weeks, I'm trying to find her owners, I can't find anybody, and she's already attached to me, and I decided, you know what, I'm meant to have this bird, I'm gonna keep this bird. I already had a cage, I'd already been thinking about it, I manifested this bird into my life. And so, like a couple months later, I'm in therapy, a group therapy session, first day of therapy. And this is like 20 miles from where I live. And I'm in the waiting room, this girl's there, she has a dog. And she's talking about her dog, how the dog can't eat grapes. And I said, oh, my bird can't eat grapes. And she's like, oh, what kind of bird do you have? And I said, oh, I have a cockatiel. And she says, oh, I love cockatiels, I just found one actually. And I said, really, where did you find one? And she said, American Social. I said, so I actually live above American Social. And I thought, holy shit, this might be the same bird. And so I pull out a picture of my bird and I find the date and I show her and I said, is this the bird you found and was this on April 17th? And she says, oh my God, that is the bird that I found. And I said, you're kidding me. And she says, I was eating at American Social. I see her on top of an umbrella. I knew this was not a local bird. This is not a, you know. So she goes to catch her. My little bird, of course, runs away. Eventually she catches her. She grabs a towel from the boat that she worked on. She grabs a French fry from her meal. She gets a box from the kitchen, puts her in the box, shuts it, puts a bunch of holes in it, and goes to the front desk and says, you know, please find a home for this bird and call me when you do. But they never called her. So now she gets to find out that I'm actually the caretaker of this bird who's been loving this bird now for months. And 5 years later, I still have this bird. She's like my child. And so I love that part of that experience because it almost like just showed me like this was kind of meant to be. I had always wanted to meet the person who either raised this bird or found her to find out the story and end up somehow finding her. But the bigger story of all of this is I've been over the last couple of years reflecting on my relationship with my father and through therapy looking at how that relationship has affected my other relationships. And I've always had these kind of abandonment issues or feeling like, did he ever really love me? If he could go from being my best friend to one day like completely disconnecting from me emotionally and kind of pushing me away. And we've never talked about this. I love my dad. We talk about all sorts of things. We still talk about animals and the universe and anything you can think of. He's never said, I'm sorry that I left you. He's never said, I'm sorry I wasn't there. But what I find interesting and special is that in a way, through showing me and instilling this love of animals, he taught me what it's like to be a caretaker. And he showed me that sometimes we could love something more than anything in this world, and when we're in a space of fear or scarcity, we might do something that hurts them. And it doesn't mean it's about them. And so now that I have this bird, I get to be a more refined bird mom than I was back in the day. But it's made me realize that just because my dad left the way he did, I know he loved me because of how much I love this bird and how much I love those birds. And even till this day, I still wish I could go back and really take care of those birds the way they deserved.
Yay.
Thank you.
I love storytelling because there's so many universal themes in it. I was in my Uber on the way over here, and the Uber driver had a unique name that I didn't know, but I recognized it as I was pretty sure that he was from Kazakhstan. And I travel all over the world, and I take great pride in Chicago when I get an Uber driver in pronouncing their names correctly, regardless of from what culture it's from. And I did it. I pronounced his name correctly, but now I can't remember it. But I get in the car, and I pronounce his name as yes, it's in Russian origin, but in America they don't. It started with a ru, and I said, is it a ru instead of a ruh? Yes, it's a ru. And he goes, you're really good. Nobody ever gets my name right. Yes, that's right. He goes, it's so nice. What a special day. Somebody got my name right. Life is short. And we're still a mile away from here. I'm like, okay, here we go. 1 mile existential conversation. And so he's like, life is short and not many people realize this, and he's just ruminating on life. And I'm like, I agree, life is really short. There's no time for anything. I'm like, but I'm getting old, and I especially, am mindful of that every day. And he looks back at me in the mirror and goes, old? You're not old. How old are you? And I'm like, I'm 61. No, you're not 61, which always makes me feel good. And he goes, no, you are 45. And I said, then that's our story. I'm 45. That's good. And he says, 61. Wow, 61. And I knew something hit him. And so we continued talking just about life and about, I travel all over the world. I do improv all over the world. I love performing in different languages with different cultures and all of this. Have a really rich 1 mile conversation. We pull up in front of Just the Funny as he's telling me the story, and I told him I had cancer last year and survived cancer. His father died last year at 61 years of age of a heart attack overnight. And he said, I just want to thank you for bringing my father back to me in my car. And I shook his hand and he kissed my hand. And I'm like, someone had a good relationship with their father. So thank you, Tara, for continuing that trend. It's a good reminder. People do have that. To do a story chain, improvised story, please welcome to the stage, Maria.
So in story chain, I pick something that I heard from the stories before, and I paid attention to the suffocating mother, and then there was the suffocating, there were the parents, and then there was the angry father, and then somehow your story came out, and there was the dying father, and I have a story, I know I do. But I'm thinking I forgot to ask Joe, can the story be not funny? Because I'm not sure I can.
Yes.
I'm not asking now. And I forgot to ask him if I can sing, but I'm not asking, I can, okay? So as I'm doing all this thing, I try to figure out, do I want to say this story? I think I do, but I'm not sure. So I will give you a chance to choose. I have this book here. The title is My Suffocating Father. It is a very, very big book. And so I go to chapter 13, and there is a title there. And I want you to imagine the title, and one of you can say a noun that may be in the title.
The.
Sorry?
The.
The
Home.
home. Okay. So here is the story. It's 6 years ago, and I am in my father's funeral. It's okay. I haven't felt anything. We didn't even have such a good relationship. And in reality, it is a really good funeral. It is a lovely funeral. There is a chorus that sings beautifully and makes everything seem so nice. And my uncle just gave a wonderful speech about my father, ending in I never said I love you, but from now on, brother, I'm gonna say I love you. And everybody loved this speech, and it was touching. And I'm looking at my father, and I don't remember ever seeing him so handsome. And I keep looking at him, and I wonder, why does he look so nice? And I know it's the people that put makeup, but again, I try to figure out. And I realize that it is the first time in my life that I see him not angry. And it is this calmness that makes him so handsome. And as I'm looking at him, I start crying. And I'm thinking this is ridiculous, because I'm really sure everybody might think, oh, she's crying because she's sad about her father. But in reality, I'm crying because I'm thinking, why the hell have I never seen this man not angry? Why haven't I seen his face so calm? And I'm so angry, and I suddenly realize this whole thing, this funeral, is a parody, because my father hated music. So why did we have this chorus? And my father hadn't talked to his brother for 10 years. He didn't want to talk to him even when he knew he would die. And it was such a parody that this uncle, who I love, but it is still so strange that this person gave the speech in the funeral. And here I am crying, and people, who knows what they're thinking, and yet I'm crying for a different reason. And I carry this moment so many years, and I'm thinking of this moment as a revelation for my relationship with him. But here is the thing. 6 years later, I found my father again, because I find myself in a trapped marriage. Because you know, I always say life is a beach. It will find the game, and it will heighten it, and it will make it even worse until the balloon is popped, and a new game, hopefully a lovely game, will start again. So I find myself in a trapped situation with another man being married to, and I have to break free. But I'm in a foreign country, having no support at all, having 2 children that I have to take care of, and I'm literally drowning. And here it is, the money that my father had left me were what helped me in this situation. And I hadn't even used this money. I didn't want to use this money. So I realized that I found my peace with my father when I took this money and I was able to break free from this other situation. So here I am, the balloon is popped, and I am ready for the new chapter.
Yeah. Now with her prepared story, please welcome to the stage, Paige.
Okay, so, hey, I am 33, and last year, yes, it's 2024, I found out I'm autistic.
Hey,
Yeah, so, but, you know, when I was younger, I had kind of, I guess I still do, like a circus in my head, I would say. My sister and I butted heads a lot. She's a year older than me, and she would always try to get me to be affectionate in a way that worked for her, and like she would hang on me, and I'd be like, oh, thank you, and she would get mad, and I wasn't being affectionate, and then, you know, on, and then the cycle went on. When I finally got my diagnosis, she was like, I knew. And I'm okay, so you got access to WebMD and suddenly you're a psychiatrist, like that's, congrats. Yeah, and so there I am, like going around telling my father, who was like, okay then, he was fine, and my brother, and she was like, yeah, it was just really heartbreaking for me growing up because you weren't affectionate, and I'm like, here we go again. Yeah, so, but part of what comes along with that is I have trouble interpreting social cues, and so I still do go to my sister for advice. So, from things like, okay, so one of my special interests, and when you're autistic, you have special interests. One of my special interests is the show Magnum PI, which is probably not a surprise to some of you. But yeah, so I was like, I want to start a fan page on Instagram for Magnum PI. And my sister says to me, oh, well, like, maybe you should make some friends in real life. Which is like, she knows I have friends in real life. She's just, yeah, she loves to, by the way, if any of you know my sister, just, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Some of you might know her. No, we're good, we're great, we're close now. But yeah, sometimes I do go to her for advice about like social cues or things like that. Like I was interested in someone, a guy, and so one time I would like talk to her about it. And one time I called her husband, who has a very similar name to the guy that I was interested in. I called him by the guy's name, and she was like, oh my God, just rolling her eyes because she just was sick of hearing my nonsense. But at least, you know, speaking of that guy, at least I tried. No, okay, wait, I should back up. Okay, so me and him, we did go, all right, so we did go to the movies twice, just me and him. But no, okay, I knew he didn't lead me on or anything. I was very well aware that we were just friends, right? But I was like, oh, well, I should inquire to see, like, maybe he wants to go, yeah, no, on like a date and stuff. And so yeah, we were sitting there, we went to the movie, we went to ice cream, and I'm like sitting there with my ice cream shaking, and so I like, it's like dripping all over me, and I worked up the courage, and he politely declined. We're still really good friends, it's fine. But yeah, he was like, well, you know, I've been going on dates lately, like on Hinge and stuff, and so I said to him, yeah, I know that's part of what got me thinking, like, oh, if you're taking appointments, put me on the schedule, you know what I mean? Like, what I was like asking for. And that, you know, he laughed, but it was fine, whatever. And then we moved the conversation on to other stuff. And then, yeah, I like the laughter, like And then so then it was time to leave, right? And I was trying to get my Uber, and there was like a moment of silence, and I was like, hey, remember the time I propositioned you for sex? And he was like, that he laughed. No, because that wasn't an accurate portrayal of his laughter. I just meant that he laughed. So yeah, it's like, no, it's embarrassing for him to have turned me down. Yeah, so I try to like not lean on people as much for in interpretation on social cues, like that situation. Okay, did anybody watch Teen Wolf? Not the 80s movie. Well, I did watch the show that was on MTV.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe you'll like get this reference. They're like, be your own anchor. Okay, whatever. You don't have to watch the show to understand like what that means. Like, be your own anchor, make your own choices. No, because and I told him, okay, so I also have ADHD, by the way. So I told another friend of mine how I like shoot my shot, and he was like, oh, that's cringe, and I'm like, no, at least I tried. But anyways, be your own anchor. This story is not linear. So anyways, at least I tried. And you know what? You know what that means? What? Now there's a spot open for my new #1 cutie. The guy, I was referencing okay, so in conclusion, be your own anchor.
Please welcome with his own story, Mark, to the
Wow. Stories are fucking amazing, right? Yeah. So I'm a fuck you guy. I don't like to be told what to do. And my favorite button in high school was question authority. And my entire life I've had this inner anger. Like I just don't like to be told what to do. But like tonight, sitting here, I can listen to a story and learn about myself. That's the best way I learn. You tell me what to do, I'll say fuck you. You show me a good story, and I'll say, wow, that's me. It's 1962, and I'm on a propeller-driven plane, and my grandmother's next to me. I'm 3 years old. You can do the math. I'm not going to say what my actual birth date is because there could be hackers in here, and you've got the year. And so I'm with my grandmother in the plane, and you know, back then planes, you could smoke in planes. They had little ashtrays in the armrests, right? And so everybody's fucking smoking, and my grandmother's fucking smoking, and the stewardesses are fucking smoking, the pilots are probably fucking smoking, and I'm 3 years old, and the plane's full of smoke. And all of a sudden, I notice something's going on, and my grandmother has fainted. And and this is, you know, I'm looking at this through the 3-year-old eyes, and people are running around, and a stewardess takes some smelling salts out and puts it under her nose, and I'm looking out the window, and I can see the city lights below, and I realize that we're on our way to Las Vegas, because somebody says that. So we get to Las Vegas, and my mother is in Las Vegas. And, you know, it's not one thing, it's your mother, right? And so, you know, and, right, and so, yeah, and then the other thing is, like, people have told me, like, when I've been through therapy and stuff in my life, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. You know, I'm like, fuck you, fuck you. Childhood sucked, fuck you! So we get to Las Vegas, and my mother is a cigar and cigarette girl at the Golden Nugget Casino, right? And she lives in this little shack, essentially. And and these are where my linear memories of life start, right? So I remember, for instance, going to the drive-in and seeing my little brother, who's 6 months old, in the back seat in a bassinet, and we're in like a 1949 Ford, right? And we're watching a movie. I don't know what the movie is. My mother's telling me that, like, my fucking mother, right? She's telling me there's like lions and tigers and bears in the mountains surrounding Las Vegas. So I couldn't even fucking sleep at night because I'm worried about getting eaten by a fucking lion, right? And but the memories get more linear, and I had this distinct memory of I had a little teddy bear, and I just love this little fucking teddy bear, man. And I'm getting choked up talking about the fucking teddy bear, and fuck that teddy bear. And so I remember sneaking up, and I remember opening this drawer to this dresser, and my teddy bear was in there, and I couldn't figure out why my teddy bear slept in the drawer and not with me, but what the fuck, I'm 3. So one day there was a sandstorm, and I remember we walked out into the porch of the little shack that my mother lived in. My grandma was there, and I always thought that my grandmother was running from my grandfather and took me to Las Vegas so she could escape from him, because my grandfather, like all of us, was a brilliant, he was a good, there are no villains or heroes, there's just depends on your perspective. He was brilliant, but he was also a dick. He died at 62 of chronic alcoholism. He was mean to my grandmother. I assumed we were fleeing. And so I look out the door, and there's rolling fucking, like, I mean, when you see pictures of the sandstorms on fucking YouTube, it's just like that. It's like a cloud of sand is coming over the fucking top of us, and the wind is fucking blowing like crazy. I open the door, I've got my little teddy bear in my arm, and I open the screen door, and just like the Wizard of Oz, it's fucking ripped off, you know? And I step out, and all of a sudden, the fucking sandstorm, fuck the sandstorm, rips my teddy bear out of my arm. Oh. And all I see is this. My teddy bear is, see his eyes, still to this day. He's like this. And he just disappears into the sand. And I'm standing there crying, and the wind's blowing, and my mother pulls me inside, and she hugged me and held me. And then, like, we lived in a town called Marion, Kentucky, 2 stoplights in 1962. It's in Kentucky. You can figure out what happened in that town. It wasn't the most pleasant place in retrospect to live. But my memories are still idyllic. And so we get back, and I don't see my mother again for 2.5 years. And my grandmother has a hysterectomy. She comes back to take care of us. All my mother was to me was a conversation on the phone on my birthday, a voice. And then she came back, she stayed with us for 2 weeks, and she left again. And I didn't see her again for another 3 years. And she showed up, and I was like 8 or 9 at the time, so she shows up, and my relationship with her was contentious, to say the least, but loving too. And my mother drank a lot, just like her father. She was a drunk. And I hated her for it. I hated her fucking leaving me. I hated her for never coming back. I hated her for telling me she was gonna come back and then she didn't come back. I had trust issues. And so all this time I carry this shit inside me. And I over Christmas time, I went to see my uncle, who's in his 80s, my mother's brother. And he tells me, I say to him, and I go over there to spend like a half hour. I spend 6 hours talking to him and my Aunt Judy. And I said, finally I got the courage. And I said, why did Mom leave us? He said, she didn't leave you. He said, your grandmother went out there to take you out there because she was already out there with your brother. My brother was born in Helena, Arkansas. My mother was a road warrior. She was a pool shark. She was the second woman in the state of New Mexico to have a jockey's license. She was a pool hustler. She was a crazy, wild woman. And we went out there to drop me off because she wanted her sons with her, both of them. And she said, my uncle said, she called me and said, Bill, I can't leave Mark out here. She's got Tom living in the drawer of a dresser. So it wasn't a teddy bear. When I opened the drawer of the dresser, I was looking at my brother.
Oh my God.
And in that moment, I realized something about her. All of the hatred went away. Because I ended up just like my mother. I was homeless for a while. I did the same things. I was a drunk, and I ended up sleeping in alleys and eating out of dumpsters. And one time I took my daughters out to prove to them I was going to be a good father, and I looked at them and I fell asleep in my fucking food. And I remember looking up at them, and the look in their eyes was the same look I had in my eyes when she drove away that day. And I realized I'm just like her. I'm just like her in the good ways and the bad ways. I'm just a good man hidden by bad things. And so the point is, it is never too late to have a happy childhood. Because in that moment, I forgave my mother. And when I forgave my mother, I forgave myself. And so, I'm 64 now, and 61 years later, my mother taught me one of the most important lessons I'll ever learn. And it is never too late to have a happy childhood.
Nice. I grew up so anti-Catholic, I never forgave my parents. I just dissociated from their memories, so I think I'm okay. Some say that's what gave me cancer. Let's have some happiness in the room.
Anyway.
It's okay. To do a story chain to close out our night, our storyteller, please welcome to the stage in the hover, you know her, Diane.
Parental distrust and neurodivergency in one story. You know what it's like to feel like the odd one out all the fucking time?
Yeah.
Preach it to the choir. Hallelujah! Okay, great. Welcome to the Church of Weirdos. Thank you. So, it's 2010. And I was having panic attacks, like almost every day, to the point where I thought it was normal. I'm like, oh, the walls are closing in today. Okay, just, fetal position. It was like a normal occurrence at this time. And it got to the point where I blocked out the Cuban voices in my head saying, therapy is for crazy people, and I decided to go to therapy. They were already, I've been called crazy throughout my life, and that's kind of like a very weaponized word, but I was like, you know what, I was just really depressed because I was in a job I really hated, and I'm at the psychologist's office, and I'm explaining my issues. Third session in, we're talking, and she goes to me all of a sudden, has anyone ever mentioned ADHD to you? And I'm like, all the fucking time, lady, but I got straight A's in school, so there's no way I had it. Not to brag, I was on the honor roll, guys. But then I discovered drugs and alcohol, so I had no brain cells, and I'm like, and then she's like, well, let's go through the list, right? And she's describing, I'm like, yes, oh yes, 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 yes. And I'm just like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me all the things people made me feel bad about my entire life is a diagnosis? This whole time. So, and the doctor goes, okay, the psychologist goes, listen, if you want to get meds or if you want to, get like a second opinion, you can go to a psychiatrist. So, the day of my psychiatrist appointment, I leave work a little early, but I didn't leave work early enough. Because just because something is like 2 or 3 miles away in Miami, it's gonna take you half an hour, especially if you're going on US 1, aka useless 1. And I had coffee that I half drank in the morning, but I didn't want to waste it because I was like, the value of $1, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take my cold ass coffee. It's like an iced coffee without the ice, okay? It's smart, okay? It's not melted down and it's cold, okay? Woman of the future, right? I had this coffee cup, I'm like rushing out to like the parking garage. I bump into someone, coffee spills all over my work outfit, right? Mind you, I'm on my way to a psychiatrist. I'm like, great, I'm gonna just prove my case now, right? Then I like drive, I'm in a hurry, I'm not paying attention to any signs because neurodivergence, we don't pay attention to details! Okay, anyway, so I park my car, right? And then the building is closed because I got the last appointment, but it's after hours, and he had emailed me specific instructions on how to get into the building. But my phone was dead. And I'm just like knocking on the door like a crazy person. I'm like, I have to see my psychiatrist! And like, now in hindsight, I'm looking back and they're like, yeah, you do, bitch. So luckily, some like old woman who was like mopping the floor with Juanita, she's like, oh, you can't to see it, don't be entra. I'm like, thank you. She's like, I have coffee. So I got so I go up the elevator or whatever, and it's one of these like weird offices. I don't know if some shrinks have this. Shrinks not the right word. Bad guy. Okay. So then I go in and there's no like front desk person. It's just a bunch of random doorbells. And I'm like, oh great, okay, so to go see a psychiatrist is like the Narnia, like do I go through a fucking closet? Like what's happening? Why is there doorbells? And I realized, oh, they have the names. But I had never seen the psychiatrist, so I didn't know the psychiatrist's name. So I rang all the doorbells. I'm like, well, someone will help me, okay? I diagnosed myself, okay? Like, I'm just gonna go in, right? So then, there's only one doctor left, and it's the only one that has late appointments, right? So, this doctor named Dr. Redacted, right? I almost said the name, right? So, he's like, oh, are you Diane Jorge? Oh, you're a few minutes late, but I won't charge you this time. And I'm just like, and mind you, I'm on the verge of tears. Right? And I have coffee all over my shirt, and I'm just like, thanks. So I walk into his office, and there's all these windows, right? I take a glimpse in the corner of my eye, and I see a car's being towed. And he's like, oh, someone's car's being towed, that must suck. And I'm like, that's my car! And I'm like, what? That's my car! That's my car! And then I'm like, does this window open? Open the window! My car's being towed! I'm screaming at a man. This is 30 seconds into meeting this person. I rang every doorbell, and I'm stained coffee, and my hair's a mess, and my face is red, and I'm banging on the window, telling him to open the window. And then he goes, so chill that it pissed me off even more. He goes, it was one of these old windows. He goes. And he's like, hey, Paco, ¿cómo está? I'm like, oh, Latino, good. Okay, bad. And he's like, no. I told her to park there. Okay, no. Take it off that gruja. I know she would have to pay. No, take it off. It's my fault. Okay, I paid the 30. It's fine. Just leave the car. I told her to park there. And I'm like, he's like, and it went. So then we sit down, he sits down, he's like, so what brings you here today? And I'm like, I think it's pretty obvious that and then, he's like, humor, deflection. crazy shit that happened too because and he goes, well, I'm here for an ADHD diagnosis, right? And the guy, so chill, like no, like, you know, he just like, I'm just gonna take out the checklist. This particular psychiatrist was right by UM, so anyway, so like, okay, he does a list, and I'm like, yes, 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 yeah. And then he's like, well, and he goes, well, you meet the criteria for ADHD. Are you interested in like, before you say, are you interested? Like, yes! Give me the meds! Fix me now! I'm broken. I get home, and I live at home with my Cuban mother and father, who let me put it to you this way. I got a C in math one time. I remember I said the honor roll thing. Instead of like asking me what was wrong, or my mom just took me to an old lady who rubbed an egg on top of me because she thought I had a demonic possession that made me get a C in math. Okay? Let me just, right? So I get home to my mom and I go, Mom, the doctor told, you know, I went to a psychiatrist and she's like, oh my God, why? Let's go to church. I'm like, no! I'm an atheist already, Mom. Spoiler alert. I was like, I really wanted to give her a heart attack at that point. No, but she goes, I go, Mom, has anyone ever mentioned ADD or ADHD when I was a kid? And she goes, well, actually, when you were 5 years old, I took you to a doctor because you were very hyper, you were like, ah! And you weren't like learning as quick as the other kids, and they told me you had this thing called ADD. And I'm like, well, no, that is not a thing in Cuba, so I don't think it's a thing. So she had taken me to like a clinic to get to a Cuban clinic, and they're like, "Oh, just give her Benadryl." So I don't know exactly. I can't see that fucking pink pill just without crying. I don't care if my trachea is closing. Do not give me fucking Benadryl. Okay. So then I stand there. I go, this whole time you made me think I was normal. And I could have like fixed this. But then my mom goes, well, you would have never had your sense of humor if you didn't go through what you went through. So, you know what? I love that everyone in the room is like, yes. I fucked up too. So, yeah, point being, that's it. No, really. The diagnosis kind of, it gave me a label. So I was able to understand myself better and understand why I did things, right? Instead of just feeling like a piece of shit all the time. I still feel like a piece of shit, but just sometimes. But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Spotlight to the group therapy lounge. Take that under advisement. Thank you, all of you, for your neurodiversity, all of your comedic ways to deal with all of your things. You're all fucking perfect. In about 10 minutes, Stacey and I will do a Stacey and Joe show in here.